Okay, next, adding, subtracting fractions. So there's 3 steps that I like you to know and always remember. So if you could maybe just copy all this out. You have a question like this: 1/6 plus 4/5. In a perfect world, I guess, or an easier world, you would just add the tops, get 5. 6 plus 5, 11. 5 over 11. But it's not that easy. You need first to make sure that these fractions are both common, or what we say equivalent fractions. And once they're equivalent, then you can add them together. So what you need to do first, the first step, is you need a number that's the same here to make them equivalent. You need a common denominator. I don't even know if I spelled denominator right. I think it's denominator. Whatever. Okay. So it's not English class. You need a common denominator. The way you do that is you look at these two numbers and you try to find the lowest common multiple. What is the smallest number that both these bottom numbers can go into? Let's try that. 2 ways to do that. You could do it the old-fashioned way, like we showed you before, where you find the lowest common multiple. Find the lowest common multiple of 6 and 5. 6, 5, do your factor trees. 6 is made of 2 and 3. 5 is just made of 5. You just multiply all these numbers together. Nothing in common between them, so you just multiply them all together. 2 times 3 times 5, and you get 30. Now I know some of you are looking at me and thinking, I don't need to do that. And no, you don't need to do that. But if you're really stuck, you can always do this LCM method that we learned before and figure out that the lowest common multiple is 30. So we just erase that. If you want to copy down, pause it now. Common sense also tells you that 6 times 5 is 30. Sometimes if you're just totally stuck, you can't think of a common denominator or a multiple between these two numbers, just times them together. It may not be the lowest one, but it'll still work, and you might have to do some reducing later, but hey, it still works. So we have to make both this and that 30. We have to make this 6 30. Well, if we're making this 6 30, what do we multiply the 6 by to get 30? We multiplied it by 5. And remember, when we're making an equivalent fraction, whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So we times the bottom by 5, we have to times the top by 5. The bottom of 6 times 5, 30. The top will be 5 times 1, 5. Same thing over here. How do we get 5 to become 30? We times it by 6. Do the same to the top. Whatever you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. 4 times 6, 24. Let's not forget to add. Okay, so step 1 is done. We have common denominators. Common means the same, denominators mean the bottom parts are the same. That's what common denominator means. Step 2, all you got to do now is you add the tops, add the numerators, and leave the bottoms. Add the tops, leave the bottoms. Add the numerators, leave the denominators. So 5 plus 24 is 29 over 30. Before we say we're done, we check to see if we can, step 3, reduce if we can. Reduce if you can. 29 over 30, can't reduce that. We're done. I'm right. On to the next question. 3 steps. Very simple. Question number 2 here. 5 and 3. What will be a common denominator between 5 and 3? A lot of ways to do this. Sometimes what I do is, again, start with the bigger number, 5, and see if it goes into that one. Nope. 5 times 2 is 10. Does that go in there? Nope. 5 times 3 is 15. Will that go into here? Yes. So 15 is a common denominator. Or, again, I could just Could have just multiplied these two together. Oh, sideways here. So, actually no, I'll go down. Be consistent. We're going to make both our denominators 15. How do we make 5 into 15? We times it by 3. Do the same to the top. 3 times 3 is 9. Don't forget the plus sign. What do we do to 3 to make it 15? We times it by 5. Do the same to the top. 1 times 5 is 5. And now, like that second rule said, add the tops, leave the bottoms. Add the tops. 9 plus 5, 14. And the bottom we leave the same, 15. I know some of you are tempted to add these two together. Don't. Leave them. Do not touch the denominators. Reduce if you can. Can't. 14 or 15 is as low as it goes. That's done. Next, subtraction. What is a common denominator between 5 and 10? Now you could just multiply them and get 50. You could do that. But later on you're going to have a few extra steps at the end. To me, I realized that, again, pick the bigger number. Does it, or can the smaller number go into the bigger number? Yes. 5 can go into 10, and obviously 10 goes into 10. So 10 is actually the lowest common denominator. So you can use 10. Again, you can use 50 as well. You will eventually get to the right answer, but I'll get there quicker. You want to pick the lowest common denominator possible. How do we make 5 into 10? We times it by 2. Do the same to the top. 3 times 2, 6. We subtract. It's already 10. So we just leave it as 10. So we leave the top as 1. Okay? I mean, if you really wanted to. What do we multiply 10 by to get 1? Sorry, what do we multiply 10 by to get 10? We times it by 1. Do the same to the top. It's 1. Either way. So we're subtracting now. Be careful. 6 minus 1 is 5. Leave the bottom. 10. Check to reduce. 5 over 10 you should know. 5 goes into both once, goes in there twice. It's 1/2, or 1 over 2. Okay, now, what about when you have fractions like this, mixed numbers? Two ways you could do this. You could separate and add the whole numbers first, and then add the fractions second and combine them together. And that works most of the time. But a method that works all the time is what you should do is you convert these mixed numbers to improper. So that would be step 1. Convert them both to improper. Remember how to do this? The bottom number times the big number plus the top number. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1, 7. Over, keep the bottom number 3. Plus 8 times 1 is 8, plus 1 is 9, over 8. What's a common denominator between these two? 24. Let me just make some more space here. Okay, so 24 is a common denominator between both. Just by times them together, it'll work that way. How do we get 3 to become 24? We times by 8. Do the same to the top. 7 times 8, 56. Plus, how do we get 8 to become 24? Times by 3. Do the same to the top. 27 is what you get there. Now, I know some of you are thinking, oh my god, that's a big, ugly answer. No worries. When you add the two together, you get 5 plus 2 is 70. So you get 83 over 24. Now, I know some of you are going, oh my god, this looks pretty hard. How many times does 24 go into 83? Just a little math on the side. 24 times 1 obviously won't work. 24 times 2 is 48. 24 times 3, you do the math, is 72. That's pretty close. 24 times 4 is going to push us over. So 24 goes into 83 3 times. We have to do this. We cannot leave our final answer as an improper fraction. So we have to do this step that I'm doing right now. So 24 goes in 83 3 times. How much left over? Oh, it goes in 72, so the difference between these two is 11, and that's over, we keep the 24, cannot reduce it, so that's done. Alright, this one here, 2 1/5 minus 1 5/6. Convert to improper. 5 times 2, 10, plus 1, 11, over 5, minus 6 times 1 is 6, plus 5 is 11, over 6. With these two now, what you do is common denominator, which is going to be 30, trust me. Just times it together, or any other method you want to use. It is 30. How do you get 5 to become 30? Times by 6. Do the same to the tops. That's 66. Don't forget the minus sign. How did 6 become 30? Times by 5. Do the same to the top. That times that is 55. You subtract the tops, leave the bottom. This gives you 11, and that stays as 30. You're done, because you can't reduce it. Now, what if you have a question like this, where you have three fractions together? It's the same thing. What you got to do is find a common denominator, though, between all three. And what you could do is take the biggest number and see if the little numbers go into it. Well, 3 goes into 6, 5 doesn't. Let's go 6 times 2, 12. 3 goes into 12, but 5 doesn't. We can go on and on and on until we'll finally get a number that works for all three, that's common to all of them. The number will be 30. And there's lots of ways you can figure that out. Again, you could multiply them all together. You would get 60 if you did that, but again, you would have to reduce, and you have bigger numbers to deal with. 30 is the lowest common denominator. You could use 60, but you'll have some extra work to do. How did 3 become 30? We times by 10. Same to the top. 1 times 10, 10. Plus, how did 5 become 30? We have to times by 6. Do the same to the top. 2 times 6 is 12. How did 6 become 30? We had it times by 5. Do the same to the top. 1 times 5 is 5. You end up with this. Add the tops. 10 plus 12, 22, plus 5, 27. Over, leave the bottom, 30. Most of you are thinking we're done. Actually, no, we're not done. You can reduce this. 3 can go into both 27 and 30. 3 goes in here 9 times. 3 goes in here 10 times. So you're left with 9/10. Okay. So yeah, adding, subtracting is more work. And you'll see with multiplying, dividing, it's actually less work in multiplying, dividing. So get through these 3 questions and the next worksheet, and you should be good to go, and you will have done the hardest part of fractions. Talk to you later. Bye.